Sanding, more sanding. And when you think you're done, more sanding. Sand until there's nothing left. Sand until you
reach your death.
Sanding. Yes, welcome back to Definitely Sanding. Since the last episode, I did this, 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 and this. And the result is this, and this, and finally, these. And this has taken a very long time to do. And now I'm just about at the point where I should start putting paint on this stuff. However, a horrible and dusty workshop is a far from ideal environment to do such activities. So I have decided to make a paint booth. Over there. Now I have decided to allocate this little bit of workshop to turning it into a spray booth. Why? Well, firstly, it's got good lighting. That's the only reason why. And what you might notice, it's probably not quite wide enough to put a whole car in it. So here's the workaround. I have made some mysterious beams, or outrigger things, that are hopefully going to hold some plastic in place, so that the spray booth is the width of this wall, plus whatever the width of this thing is as well. Which just so happens to be quite a bit wider than the car. I also did this. It's a fan. I'm going to use it as an extractor fan. And I've put a load of filter material over the back of it, so anything it draws in will come out filtered. And then I'm going to cut a little hole in the plastic bit and tape around it so that this is going to be my positive pressure extraction system. I've seen some people do it with a vacuum. If you need to ask why this is a bad idea, you should probably be watching this video. Because before I go about building a plastic tent, I'm going to impart all the knowledge I've learned about painting cars from the internet. Now I have bought these very expensive and completely unbranded boxes that cost an incredible amount of money, so I'd better not mess it up. Now this is the stuff that I've bought. This is basically a 3-part paint job. You start with a primer, you do your base coat, and then you finish with a clear coat. Now the eagle-eyed amongst you might have spotted things. Why is there twice as much base coat as there is primer? Well, this is all due to mixing ratios. Basically, you have a little instructions booklet for every one of these coats. And the mixture of this one is a 4:1. So that's basically 4 parts of thinner to 1 part paint. This paint is a 1:1. So in spraying, this is the same amount of paint as that. And then clear coat can go away, because I don't really know anything about that yet. You can also ignore the stuff in this box. That's just for cleaning guns and stuff. Now speaking of guns, this is the one I'm going to be using. Don't be stupid. I will be using this one. Let me show you its features. Now this is a very typical but very cheap gun. And I'm not very good at painting, but I've used this before. You might have seen me paint the chassis with it. And this has a 2-stage trigger. Basically that first bit will only let air out of the gun and no paint. And when you pull it all the way, it'll start adding paint to the air. Now on the end of the gun you'll see a nozzle. This nozzle comes in various sizes depending on what you're going to be painting. So for example, primer is typically thicker than regular paint, so you would use a fatter nozzle to let thicker paint come out. And then when you're using other paints, you'll use a thinner nozzle. So in this case I'm going to use a 1.8 to spray my primer and a 1.3 to spray the rest of it. I'm not just pulling these numbers out of the air. These are in the instructions on the paint. Anyway, you've got a few controls. This one is to control how much paint is coming out of the gun when you pull the trigger. This one controls the fan of the gun. You'll find that if you wind this all the way in, it'll basically put a stream straight out and you'll end up just basically drawing a little cone. But if you increase the fan, you'll end up with a vertical fan spray pattern. And this is something you have to dial in to make sure you're getting a consistent coat. And this one on the bottom basically controls the airflow. This is essentially pointless because I have this gubbins attached. So this one is a pressure regulator. This will make sure that my air pressure stays constant. And this is a water separator, because inevitably whenever you use a compressor you make a little bit of water in the bottom of it in the tank, which will inevitably end up in your airline. And this just basically removes that. Anyway, seeing as the air is regulated here, it doesn't need to be regulated here, so you can wind that out to make sure that everything is controlled by this. Now obviously I've watched many videos about setting these things up, and all I have seen everyone do is wind this one out most of the way, pull the trigger all the way, and wind it in until it touches, because this is basically affecting how far you can pull the trigger in, and then you can lock it off like that. From there, you adjust the fan, and that's about it, as far as I know, because I don't know anything anyway. This is basically a guide for people who don't know anything. Anyway, this wanky little thing on top is combined with this, and this is something I went out of my way to order because I think it's a good idea. Basically, it's a measuring jug there that gives you your ratios, but there's a hole in the bottom, and you basically sleeve it with this disposable one. You mix everything in there, put your cap on top, and shove it in there. Once you're empty, take out the sleeve, throw it away, and mix up another lot. And at that, you know exactly as much about painting as I do. Now it's time for a thumbnail. And if you clicked on this video because of that, welcome. So now I'm going to build a plastic enclosure that's totally going to comply with OSHA standards. Montage.
And then, something terrible happened in the Ridiculous Things workshop.
Bother! Now keep in mind this is after I've tried to straighten it, and it's bloody horrible. I don't think there's really any saving it. There's a huge kind of contusion that's formed in this door because this was folded right under like that. And two things have come of this. Firstly, I'm not a very happy boy, and finally, it means I need a new door. The only positive thing to come of this is because this was the worst of the two doors anyway. You can see I've had to fill a few dents that are in here, in 3 places anyway. I mean, they're perfectly smooth and you'd never know there was a dent there, but filler is filler. But sadly, this is where I have to come to a stop until I find a new door. I wish this had happened before I'd spent about a day sanding the whole thing and stripping it, but what can you do about it? So as you can see, this has become the most undramatic drama ever to happen in this workshop. So this is my plea for the masses. If any of you have a door knocking around, I would love to buy it off you. I need it to basically be the poverty spec, none of that nonsense that goes on the bottom, and the 2-hole mounted windows. And I'm in Central Coast. Probably willing to travel up to 2 hours to get it. So message me on here or something else. Maybe I'll put something there. But yes, I need a door. So that just about concludes this zero progress video with a clickbait title. I didn't actually paint anything in this episode, but everything is ready to be painted, except the door that fell on the floor and bent.